And now you all are in for a real treat. I'm honored and humbled to introduce our next speaker of the evening, who quite honestly needs no introduction. When it comes to professional experience, there isn't much our next speaker has not done. From practicing law, working on Capitol Hill and in the White House, and finally, as co-founder and co-CEO of the Carlyle Group, one of the world's largest private equity firms, he truly is at the pinnacle of personal and professional success. He also serves on the board of directors of trustees of Johns Hopkins University, the University of Chicago, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, Johns Hopkins Medicine, and the National Museum of the American History of the Smithsonian Institution. That's all. On top of all of this, though, he has even found the time to assist in the restoration of the Washington Monument and to save the pandas at the National Zoo. I mean, come on. Given his schedule of constantly traveling around the country, we really are truly fortunate and thankful that he was able to be here tonight to provide remarks that I am positive will resonate with our membership of Hispanic business leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage a true titan of business, a DC fixture, and a new friend of the USHCC, Mr. David Rubenstein.
So how many people here would like to follow John Lewis as a speaker? Anybody? Anybody like to do that? I drew the short straw, and it's my responsibility to do that. I'll do the best I can, but lower your expectations of what you're going to hear. You're never going to hear anything as great as what you just heard. I have a similar but very, very modest story compared to John Lewis's. Although my last name is Rubenstein, and you would say if your name is Rubenstein, maybe you grew up when your father's a doctor or lawyer or something like that. There are Jewish people who are not well educated. My father dropped out of high school to go into World War II and served the Marines. And he came back, he met my mother, and they got married. I'm the result, the only product of that marriage. My father worked for 35 years for the Post Office of the United States, never made more than $7,000. So I realized as a young boy that if I was going to get anywhere, I had to do it probably on my own. I didn't have a parent that could pull strings for me. And then when I was young, I was inspired by a speech just as John Lewis was inspired by a speech. When I was in the 6th grade, I heard a man give a speech 1 mile from here. It was John Kennedy. And he said on January 20th, 1961, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And the idea of making money never appealed to me. I didn't have any money. My parents never thought of making money or inspiring me to make money. I thought that speech was an incredible speech, the greatest inaugural speech of the 20th century, poetry in prose form. And I decided what I would try to do is give back to my country in any modest way that I could. And so I ultimately got a degree in law and went to work for the man who wrote that speech, Ted Sorensen. And I practiced law with him, and after a few years, I said, I want to go to work in government and serve my country in the White House as you did. And my colleagues in the law firm said, well, that'd be a good idea because you're not that good a lawyer. And I talked to my clients. I said, I'm going to move to Washington someday and help the country. And they said, that'd be good because you're not that good a lawyer. So I got the hint. And eventually I did work for a man from John Lewis's current state, Georgia. And I joined Jimmy Carter's presidential campaign when he was 33 points ahead. And after I joined, he won by 1 point. President Carter often said, what did you actually do to help my campaign? I was doing pretty well before you showed up. But White House staffs are not always filled on merit, and maybe they're never filled on merit. So I got a job as the Deputy Domestic Policy Advisor to the President of the United States when I was 27, a job I was obviously not qualified for, but many people in the administration weren't qualified. One of my assignments was to get inflation down. I got it down to 19%. No one's done that since. One of my other assignments was to get mortgage rates down. I got them down to 22%. There was a rumor that if President Carter was reelected, I would be the senior domestic advisor, the same job that Ted Sorensen had. And on the strength of that rumor, President Carter thinks he lost the election. So I had to go back and practice law. And once again, my client said to me, you know, you're not a very good lawyer. And my partner said, you know, you're not a very good lawyer. So I had to leave the practice of law. And then about a few blocks from here, I decided to start a business, an entrepreneurial venture, just myself initially. I recruited other people. I had no money, and nobody thought it would succeed. My mother started crying. She said, you know, I sent you to law school, and you're going to be a lawyer, now you're a businessman, you're going to go bankrupt. And I thought she might be right. Later, it turned out that I got very lucky. I had some very good partners, and I helped to build this company into one of the largest private equity firms in the world. And as a result, I realized not too long ago that I had far more wealth than I really needed, and far more wealth than my children needed, though they didn't maybe agree with that necessarily. So I decided that what I would try to do is actually atone for my sins at the White House and give back to the country now that I had enormous financial means to do so. And so I decided that I was the only person in the private equity world who signed the Giving Pledge with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And I decided that says you're going to give away half your wealth. But I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give away all my money, because I really don't think I need it, and I don't think my children need it. So I'm going to give it away, I hope, during my lifetime. And so what I'm trying to do is to encourage other people to do something similar to what I'm doing, though I'm very modest compared to what I want to do. And that's what I call patriotic philanthropy, giving back to your country. Now, all of us have different backgrounds. Some are Hispanic, some are African American, some are Jewish, some are everything else, Asian American. All of us have one thing in common. We're Americans. And as Americans, if we pull together, we can make this country, with all of its flaws and all of its mistakes and all of its birth defects that we are trying to overcome, we can make this country the greatest country on the face of the earth ever. The backbone of this great country, obviously, is very talented people, but it's people who have built businesses and have taken their entrepreneurial spirit and made this country the envy of the world, and it's the people who have taken their resources and given back to the country. So in my own case, I've tried to buy historic documents like the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, and give them back to the country so people can see them and be inspired by them. And I've tried to help fix monuments like the Washington Monument, or Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, or Montpelier, James Madison's home, or the Custis Lee Mansion, Robert E. Lee's home, and say, when you fix these, make sure they're historically accurate. I want people to know that slaves lived there. We have to show everybody the good and the bad in this society. So what I would like to do is to encourage everybody to think about this and don't make the mistake I made. The mistake I made was waiting till I had a lot of money to start giving away and giving back to my country. Philanthropy is an ancient Greek word. It means loving your fellow humans, loving humanity. It doesn't mean rich people writing checks. You don't need to be wealthy to be a philanthropist. You need to give your time, your energy, your ideas. So all of you who are business people, don't wait till you're 55, 60, 65, 70. Don't wait till you're near your deathbed and say, I'm going to give back to the country. Give back to the country now. Whatever time you have, whatever resources, give back something and inspire your children to do it. This country can only aspire and only reach the dreams that our founding fathers had if people here who have the means do so by giving back when they can do so. Not an afterthought, but do it when you can. Call it patriotic philanthropy, call it whatever you want. Whatever community, help your country, help your community. Give back, because if you give back, I really think you will be a much better human. Selfishly, you'll probably live longer, because people who give back are healthier. People who give back live longer. Nobody who gives back says, I hate myself for giving back to my country. Nobody's ever grumpy when they give back to the country. And healthy people, happy people live longer. So whatever your motive, give back to the country. This is the greatest country anybody can possibly live in with all of our flaws, so please give back. When John Kennedy finished his speech, that day on January 20th, 1961, the most famous line was the one that you all know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And that inspired me and hopefully inspired many other people in my generation. I know that it did. But he ended that speech with another sentence that I think is very important and maybe even more important. With a good conscience, your only sure reward, with history, the final judge of your deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth, God's work must truly be our own. All of what you can do is God's work on earth. Giving back to your country is God's work on earth. Thank you very much.